Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in this big blue marble we call Earth. My name is Bill Rivers, and welcome to Tracerco Talks. Folks, we got a great show for you today, and we have a very special guest host today, Mr. Rick Grayson. Rick, how are you doing today?
I'm absolutely brilliant, thanks, Bill. And how's things in your corner of the world?
Actually, blue skies, a little bit breezy, tad bit cold, but other than that, it's a gorgeous day.
Wow, that sounds perfect.
So, since you're the co-host, Rick, it's kind of tradition that you kind of give the audience just tell them a little bit about yourself, really quick.
Oh, thanks very much, Bill. So I'm Rick Grayson. I've been working with Tracerco for just a shade over 20 years, although I'm sure I don't look it. I've spent the majority of my career working in our operations departments, be that in process diagnostics, be that in reservoir. I've worked and had the opportunity to live all over the world. So I'll be forever grateful for Tracerco for expanding my horizons.
Wow, that is that really is an impressive career. Well, Rick, I know we've worked together just a little bit, but I think you need to know me. A couple things, or just maybe something about me. So, did you know that I have a phobia of stairs?
Do you live in a bungalow, Bill?
No, but
Okay.
you need to ask me, why do I have a phobia of stairs?
Sorry, I wasn't playing along there, was I? Bill, why do you have a phobia of stairs?
Because they're always up to something.
Boom,
Folks,
boom.
if you cannot smile, at least laugh at that. Come on. It's going to be a great day. Come on. All right, let's get started. Today, we have a very special guest, Miss Sinem Stevenson. She is in charge of our fuel securities market. Sinem, how are you doing?
I'm very good. I'm very good. Thank you. How are you, Bill?
I am doing great. So, to get things rolling, can you kind of describe what you do at Tracerco for us?
Yes, sure. So I've been with Tracerco almost 4 years now, and currently I'm working as the Reservoir and Assurance Commercial Manager, as the Reservoir Assurance Commercial Manager for the especially for the Europe and Africa region. And when we talk about fuel security, that actually falls under that department.
Nice. So, fuel securities. You know, what is it? Are you like the cops of the oil and gas industry? Dive into that. Tell us what it feels. It sounds very fascinating to me what fuel securities market is.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, it is interesting. So, fuel security and fuel marking is actually a method of authentication used to combat fuel theft, smuggling, and adulteration globally. So, we basically have unique markers that we use to mark the fuel, and then we have our own detection instruments where we go out and basically monitor and follow the supply chain to see the fuel that we mark is the fuel that is in the supply chain. It hasn't been adulterated with other chemicals, so it hasn't been smuggled and everything else. So we can basically follow and monitor all the supply chain and ensure the integrity of it.
So if I understand this correctly, you guys stick some sort of like an isotope or something into the oil and gas that if someone attempts to try, or oil, excuse me, that attempts to try to sell it at a different type of refinery, you guys can instantly detect that that's this person's oil, someone else has treated fraud. Is that
That's
correct?
correct. Correct.
Okay.
So what we do is, though, in terms of what we inject into the fuel, uh, it is environmentally friendly chemicals, so it doesn't, cause any further environment pollution or anything like that. It doesn't create further CO2, so it is very environment friendly. We inject those chemicals into the fuel in tiny, tiny amounts. It's not detectable, it's not visible, it's colorless. It doesn't have any impact on the engine performance or anything. So nobody ever even realized that it doesn't have any impact on anything. Everything just runs as smooth as it should be with our marker in it. And then we just take our instrument, take a little sample of the fuel, put in our instrument. Within less than a minute, we know if that is the fuel that is supposed to be, or whether it's been adulterated with some ugly other chemicals and somebody's, making profit from it.
So when we talk about fuel cinema, is that crude or is it refined product? Or is it a whole host of material?
whole host. So we could do both. We do mainly, I suppose, the projects that we work on are mainly focusing on crude on the field itself, the refined product. But we have things that is coming up with the crude oil as well. So we have markers that we can do that with the crude oil and as well as the refined product.
Okay, that's quite interesting, Sinem. So is that right across the hydrocarbon chain? Are we talking sort of gasoline, diesel, aviation
It is.
fuel, biofuels?
Yeah. Oh, that is a very good question. So in terms of the fuel, diesel, yes, we do all of that. In terms of when we talk about the aviation fuel, it is different because aviation fuel it has actually it's controlled and you can't really add any chemicals into aviation fuel. There's a global standard that they have to comply with. What we do with aviation fuel, though, because some of the aviation fuel, as you may know, are rebated, and therefore there might be some criminal temptation for some organizations to steal it. And there are governments and organizations who want to monitor this and ensure that supply chain is clear from any criminal activity. So therefore what we do is instead of adding any chemicals into the aviation fuel, we can monitor it actually by detecting some already existing molecules in the aviation fuel. So without adding any chemicals, we can still, ensure the integrity of the supply chain as well. With biofuels, it's new, it's coming up, as you know. We started working on few inquiries already with some very well-known companies around the world on how we can mark and monitor their supply chain as well. And there are different types of projects. So, for example, you have governments who are asking for the retailers and the oil marketing companies to mix their fuel with certain level of biofuel, and they want to ensure everybody complies with that legislation, and therefore they are interested in marking the fuel. And on the other hand, you got oil marketing companies or companies who are working production of biofuels, and what they do is they want to see how much of their biofuel is being used in the supply chain in the market, and so they can go back to government and benefit from some grants, for example. But in order to benefit from those grants, they have to prove so many percentage of their biofuels are in the supply chain. So we have two different type of customers, I suppose. We work with governments and we also work with oil marketing companies, private organizations.
Oh, wow, that's a big breadth and a lot of potential customers out there.
It is correct.
So basically you're not the cops of the oil and gas world, you're the detectives. So you go out and
We are the
find what's going
detectives,
on.
yes. Yeah, exactly. I suppose the cops are our customers because obviously with the results they get, they can then enforce right processes. For example, for governments, we can produce forensic evidence for them to, enforce penalties or take the criminal people to the court and do what is required as per the legislation by using the forensic evidence that we produce.
That's really interesting and fascinating. So back in the day, I know we had a customer that was when oil was above $100 a barrel. They were telling us a story of trucks filled with water would back up to remote pumping stations, and they would do kind of like a switcheroo where they basically start pumping the water and drain off the oil at the same time. Is that something along the lines that you guys could assist with in detecting?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. We could do that. It's just a matter of marking that fuel and following the supply chain to ensure that fuel doesn't end up in the wrong hands. For example, in some jurisdictions or territories, what we see is you may have two countries with different fuel pricing. The governments might have different tax regimes on the fuel, and therefore one country is benefiting from really cheap fuel prices where the other one is very expensive because they have high tax regimes, and the fuel constantly moves. It gets imported, exported, and what we do see quite often is that cheap fuel ending that was designated for in-country local use ending in the neighboring countries on a desk, on a table, on the road, in plastic bottles, being sold to the people just driving off the road. We do see that quite often actually, and our technology is the solution. It completely eliminates the possibility, or let's say minimize to a point that it is almost eliminated, because you will always get people, people with that sort of motivation. Who wants to do some, maybe criminal activities? And no matter how much informants you have in place, you will always have those people. But I can confidently say we reduce the possibility of that happening to maybe to 5%. It's incredible. And with our technology, actually, when we implement a program with our softwares as well, the governments especially, they can see the tax revenue recovery, day in, day out. They can see as months pass how much more tax revenues that they recovered by having this program. So we also provide the visualization of the program.
See, I never considered the tax implication. I never even really considered that. That's pretty fascinating right there, going to neighboring countries and selling it in neighboring countries. I'm sorry, Rick, what were you gonna say?
No, I was just going to say, when you talk about the technology cinema, I think you mentioned earlier about finding the marker. How's that done?
Well, we have a very big R&D department. We invest actually 5% of our revenue each year into our R&D to ensure that we are on the top of our league when it comes to technology. So we have a big team of chemists who are working on finding these unique chemical components for us to use. So it's the top secret. It is very important that those chemicals are not out in the wild. But yeah, we have a big team who are working on coming up those formulas and doing formalizing the blend of the unique marker.
So that must take a lot of time then. So when the guys want to analyze the sample, that must take a lot of time. Is it shipped internationally, or how's that done?
So what happens that we have those molecules obviously already discovered and they are in our portfolio. We know that these are our molecules. We have a quite big range of molecules that we can offer in each program, and which one we choose will depend on the program and the problem we are trying to resolve. Once we determine which one we want to use, that then gets manufactured and then we blend it with other chemicals and then ship it to the country. I would say if we win a program today, mobilization of that program, depending on the requirements, and I'm talking about the government program, a big program, or a domestic program where we mark all the local fuel, I would say that would take from 3 to 6 months. But it depends on the size of the program and the problem that we are trying to resolve. Obviously, when you mobilize a program, you start introducing the marker into the fuel, and we need to wait until all of the fuel in the country is being marked, and that does take time. It can take up to a month because you expect the fuel that is unmarked to be consumed, so that the one with the marker is introduced around the supply chain.
So forget being a cop, forget me detectives. You're basically the crime scene guys. You're the crime scene investigators. That's what it truly boils down to, right? Because what you're talking about is incredibly fascinating, right? I never knew this all existed. I mean, I never knew that you could actually put chemicals in there. So it's just to be clear, it's not a radioisotope. It's a chemical that you guys put in there, correct?
It is an environment-friendly chemical. There is nothing ugly in it. It's very environment-friendly. Yeah, that is really important to us, especially given these days. We do have, you have others. Well, it's a very niche market. I would say there isn't really many suppliers, but you do see, chemicals out there that's been used for the same purpose, but they are halogenated and they are not really good for the environment. We did ensure that we did ensure in our profile we don't have any of those chemicals, just the good ones.
Nice, environmentally friendly company. I like that a lot. You got any more questions, Rick?
I was just thinking the cinema. I mean, I'm sure you can't name names, but in terms of amount of material marks, in terms of gallons, etc., and how much do you think has been tagged over the years?
Oh, that's a tough question. A lot.
Is it a big number?
It's a very big number. I'll just give you an example of a program that to give you an idea, but I won't really disclose all the all of the volumes. It would be very difficult. But also let me say that when I say we put so little amounts in a fuel, we put only 10 millimeters of a blended chemical that's all environmentally friendly in 1,000 liters of fuel. So
Wow.
you can tell how little marker that we use to detect and come out, make all the analysis, and the data that comes out from it is incredible. It is, it's very comprehensive. But in terms of the size of the programs, I could maybe talk about an example where we work with a country actually since 2001. So this country actually realized that their fuel had been adulterated by addition of solvents. So they decided if we mark the solvents, that we could detect the adulteration in the supply chain. So what the government was saying, every year there was a big amount of solvent import into the country, where they knew that the solvent wasn't required and it wasn't used in where it was supposed to be used. So what they actually suspected is that solvent was finding its way into the fuel supply chain, and the fuel had been adulterated by this extra imported solvent. Obviously it's very cheap, when you compare it with the fuel prices, and that means that the government is not really getting the tax revenues that they were supposed to get. They were losing out from the tax revenues, which they could use in so many other things for the country. And we came up with this the solution for them. In 2001, we mobilized the project with this country, and since we mobilized the program up to date, we looked at this actually a couple of years ago, and a couple of years ago we calculated the tax revenues that they recovered. It was $550 million that they recovered.
Wow.
Whoa.
A year, per year.
Wow.
That is per year. So 2 years ago, when we looked at the numbers, they actually, since we mobilized the program, they recovered in total just over $10 billion. So it is great, recovery for the government. We are very, happy that we managed to resolve this problem for them. And in addition to those recovered tax revenues, they also generated another $300 million revenues in fines, because they were obviously finding the criminal organizations or people, and they were fining those people, and with those fines they generated extra 300 million on the top of the 10 billion tax revenue recovery. So you can see that the impact that it may have on a country's economy.
Absolutely huge. Wow.
That is huge.
And when we look at the old marketing companies, again, I can give another example where we have a customer. They wanted to ensure that their customers who were buying the premium fuel, you had the standard fuel and you have the better performing premium fuels, and
Right.
those fuels at the retailer stations, they are sold for a higher price. They wanted to ensure that the retailers were selling the premium fuel at the premium price from the premium pump, not the standard fuel at the premium price at the premium pump. So they wanted to ensure their customers were getting the right product, what they paid for. They wanted to deliver the promise to their customers. And that's two things. They ensure that the revenues from the premium fuel is increasing, because nobody's diluting that with standard fuel. And secondly, they were able to go out and promote this. Their adverts are, look what we are doing for you. We are marking the fuel to ensure that you got the right product. We are ensuring that our supply chain is fully it is assured that it's secure, and they use it as a marketing tool for themselves as well. And this is a project that we've been supplying for, I suppose, the last 6 years, 6-7 years. It's very successful, and they are definitely not constrained to stop it.
So you get all the way down to the retail level. You
Yes.
get that deep into the process.
Yeah, we do. We have instruments that, as I mentioned, detection instruments that we use, from lab to mobile instruments. We have instruments where we can generate forensic evidence for governments to use in court cases, and we can generate results in less than a minute. Our mobile detection instruments, just you took a little sample of the field, you put it into the device. It is all in the clouds. It connects to a mobile phone. You start the sampling test. Less than a minute time, you have the result.
Wow. So does that need to be like a fully trained chemist that does that, Sinem?
The inspection, in-field inspection team could be anyone. We can train anyone, because it is such a easy portable equipment to use. It's incredible. So no, it doesn't have to be a chemist. The lab instrument, I would suggest so. We would need a chemist to train.
Interesting stuff. Hey, we are almost out of time. Rick, do you have any final thoughts, final questions you'd like to ask her?
No, I'm just trying to get those figures through my head, Bill, and think what a shot in the arm, that amount of cash is to any country. That's a lot of hospitals. So.
Yeah, you're right. If you put it in terms of like hospital, roads, public services, that number is just huge, just massive. Well, Sinem, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for coming on Tracerco Talk today. I'd also like to thank our guest co-host, Mr. Rick Grayson. He did a great job today. If you want to get a hold of us, I can be found on LinkedIn at william.rivers. And I believe, Sinem, you're also on LinkedIn as well?
Correct. Yes, Sinam Stevenson.
There you go. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for enjoying another episode, and we look forward to talking to you again.
Thanks, Bill. Really enjoyed it.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.